our guest this morning at this very early hour is one of my very favorite people. He is absolutely a brilliant man. His scholarship on military affairs and foreign policy is second to none. He is a legitimate war hero, has been deployed into combat zones 4 times, beginning with Operation Desert Storm. He's been to Iraq. He's been to Afghanistan twice. He was awarded the Bronze Star Medal for Valor. He is a decorated war veteran, and he's somebody that is so independent. When he came back from Afghanistan, he published a detailed report essentially saying how senior U.S. military and civilian leaders told the American public and Congress that the war was going well, while in reality it was headed to defeat. Now, everything we've seen over the last 8 years shows this was correct. He's also the author of the new book, The 11th Hour in 2020 America. Gives me a great deal of pleasure to welcome Colonel Daniel Davis. Colonel Davis, thank you so much for getting up early this Veterans Day.
Hey, you bet. Thanks for letting me on today. This is a very special day. I appreciate it.
Well, no, I mean, you and I have spoken many times in the past, and you're a senior fellow with Defense Priorities, which is a terrific think tank. By the way, if people aren't familiar with Defense Priorities, how would you characterize the work that you guys do over there?
Yeah, well, we try to fill in the gap that I think there's not many that fill in. You know, we're definitely not neocon pro-war kind of thing. We are for a very strong national defense, though, unapologetically, but we advocate diplomacy as the primary tool of international relations, and we think that the especially lethal military power should be reserved for when it's an absolute last resort to keep our country safe. Otherwise, we need to keep that very powerful sword in the sheath.
All right. Well, I mean, it seems to make sense with me. If you look at not only Afghanistan, but Iraq and Libya and a lot of other places where the American military has intervened, it doesn't seem to have gone necessarily too well for either America or the places where we're doing the intervening.
Right.
So Veterans Day is a pretty important day in American history, and it's a day where we've come to generally commemorate the sacrifice that the men and women serving in the military have made to the country. You think that maybe this year we should look at Veterans Day a bit differently. How come?
Well, and actually, I'm not so much that it's differently, maybe differently from how it's been viewed, but I think we've kind of lost the spirit of the original intent, which was to honor the war dead and to honor their sacrifice and to honor those people that they left behind. And, you know, there's just too many people, I think, today, out of, a big heart and certainly a good intention, have almost turned it into a celebration, and a pat on the back to veterans almost across the board. But what that does, unintentionally, is sort of diminish the actual cost to our veteran community and to those they've left behind. Because, most people are aware that there was around 6,000 or so who've been killed in the war on terror. It's really all the combat action since 9/11. But what a lot of them are less aware of is the more than 50,000, I think it's 55,000 who have been wounded in action, somewhere around 110,000 to 200,000, depending on which one you look at, people who suffered traumatic brain injuries and another several 100,000 who have PTSD on top of that. I mean, we're talking close to 500,000 American men and women in service who have suffered one kind of injury or another from the wars. And people are really staggered when they see that. And when you think about how that impacts so many hundreds of thousands of other lives, you start to get a sense of, wow, we've really, imposed a lot on our veteran community. And so these forever wars that I'm all advocating we need to end because they're just counterproductive on a national level. They also, because they impose such an extraordinary cost on one particular segment of our society. And I think if people recognize that, they might understand a little bit more why I'm so advocating that we end these forever wars.
Well, I certainly agree with you. Obviously, I don't have anywhere near your level of experience or expertise, but as a layman, I couldn't agree with you more. We're talking with Colonel Daniel Davis. You can read some of his work over at Defense Priorities, or you can check out his book, the 11th hour in 2020 America. Now, Colonel, give me your reaction to President Trump's decision to fire Secretary of Defense Mark Esper. Good decision, bad decision, too early to tell? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think that the bottom line is that it's really irrelevant one way or the other. I mean, it probably satisfied a personal urge of his, but it doesn't have any practical impact because even though the Secretary of Defense personally, Mark Esper is gone, there's somewhere around 2 million other Department of Defense officials, workers, and uniformed service personnel. They're all still on the job, and everything's still going on. There's somebody else acting in his role.
Sure.
So it won't have any practical impact. It doesn't make us any less secure. It doesn't put anything at risk. It's just maybe a little bit uncouth and unorthodox and probably, frankly, unnecessary. But that's what he did, and that's just how it's going to shake out. People are just going to have to deal with it.
Now, I know you've generally been pretty vocally supportive of President Trump. Now that it appears that President-elect Biden is on the way to the Oval Office, how concerned are you about a possible change in direction in America's foreign policy and military policy?
Well, I have been actually very outspoken on support of foreign policies that make sense, and whether that was if President Bush was doing something that made sense, or Barack Obama, or Donald Trump, or soon-to-be President Biden, I'm all for those, and I will support anybody who does what's good and what makes sense for America. And I think that Biden, he's got kind of a checkered past, to be frank, because he was not only supportive of the 2003 war in Iraq with President Bush. I mean, he was like an enthusiastic supporter and backer of it. He's the one who actually helped bring around the Democrat support that was so necessary politically to get that war off the ground. But it does appear that he can learn from his mistakes because he was, when it came time for the Afghan surge, he was also for the Iraq surge when it came out. But I think that over time he realized that it had no practical impact. Nothing really good happened. So when it came time to consider the 2009, at the time the decision was made for Obama to surge into Afghanistan or not, he was against it and actually worked hard inside the administration to have basically a go small strategy instead of a go big strategy, which they ended up adopting. So he learned from that, and my hope is that he can see that a lot of the other foreign policy that President Obama made was actually not very good at all, and especially when it came time to talking about using the military, whether it was going into Libya, whether it was going into the Yemen war, sending troops back into Iraq, back into Syria, all that under the Obama administration. None of it was successful. I mean, none of it. We're still paying the price for that today. So I hope Biden continues the process that he has shown throughout his career to learn from experience. And I hope that when he gets in now, he's going to say, all right, let's go in a new direction, something that makes more sense, which is one of the reasons I wrote that book.
Yeah, no, people definitely should check it out. It's very, very interesting to see exactly how many differences there are politically between presidents that end up acting the same way in terms of foreign policy and military affairs. So we'll certainly see what happens. Well, Colonel, I appreciate the time this morning. It is always a treat to talk with you. I appreciate you beginning your Veterans Day with me, and I thank you for not only your service to our country, but the tremendous intellectual service you do in terms of furthering discussion of public affairs, particularly as it relates to the military.
That's really nice of you to say, Frank. I really appreciate it. And thanks for having me again, especially on this day.
Thank you, Colonel Daniel Davis, a senior fellow at Defense Priorities.